Okay, I will continue the presentation in English, so I do hope the translation is there for those who need it. And I will just, in the 5 remaining minutes, really focus on those elements of that we have elaborated upon in the handbook that really deal with how do you start with implementing sustainable public procurement? What are the first steps in the process? And then the first step is really what are the products and services to be looking at that you can identify to really reach those early successes in sustainable public procurement. And some guidelines and suggestions of criteria of choosing those products and services that we give is to first look at identifying really the low-hanging fruit that when you implement sustainability aspects in buying those products and services will immediately result in some visible and tangible results in terms of environmental and social impacts. So those products that have an immediate environmental or social impact, let's think of transportation, vehicles, for example. Once introducing sustainability aspects in procuring those, there will be an immediate reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. There will be better results in terms of air pollution. So that's one of the criteria that we suggest using for choosing those products and services to start implementing SPP. And furthermore, as we've also heard in the other sessions this morning, it's really about how to position procurement as a strategic driver of a more sustainable and a more inclusive economy. And there, what really helps is to identify those products and services for which procurement represents a large share in the total demand for the product, because the larger the share that public agencies are buying, the more impact it will have on the production side of those products. And then finally, one of the other criteria that are very useful to look at is what are really the priorities in terms of development, and what are the priorities for each of your countries in terms of national development strategies? What are the domestic industries that your SMEs are very good at producing, and focus on choosing products that these domestic industries can also deliver. And then the second part of prioritizing where to start is really looking at, okay, in which part of the procurement cycle can I really start introducing sustainability aspects? And for that, Marina has already explained in the infographic that we've included in the handbook. One of the first steps is really to look at that needs assessment. I won't go over that again because Marina has very well explained it already. A second part is not to immediately start increasing the barriers of mandatory technical specifications that relate to sustainability, because you may risk of crowding out those suppliers that are actually really necessary for your economy. So what we do suggest is to include suggested criteria in your award procedure of the tenders. So what you do is not only award based on price, but also reward those suppliers that actually provide you with goods and services that have a better environment, that have a less environmental impact, that are more socially inclusive, without actually crowding them out. So at first, at a suggested stage, not at a mandatory stage. The other elements are, of course, pre-qualification of suppliers, which is a very helpful instrument to push suppliers in, for example, complying with certain ISO norms in terms of environmental management systems or the socially inclusive systems, and also in the contract conditions of the awarded contracts, eventually to there also include clauses that relate to sustainability. And this can go from very easy changes to be made, as for example related to the delivery of the products, reduce or push suppliers there in terms of delivering in more sustainable packaging or in a more sustainable way of transporting the goods to where they need to go. So those are the elements that we do think are important in highlighting. The other direction. If the slide wants to move, I can do it in 1 minute. Come on. Okay, In 1 minute, let me summarize. Sustainable does not always mean there is a higher cost. It is an argument that is often heard. It is something that I think in our work is the most often heard conversation that we've had. There are ways, and there are many ways, to overcome the so-called green premium. And many of these things are already happening in the countries of the network, such as buying in bulk, using framework agreements, and using central procurement platforms to really reduce the price of the goods that may be more sustainable. But more importantly, there are other things, and I will just list them all here in the remaining 20 seconds. There are more things that can be done. Looking in terms of not just buying a product, but why not buy an integrated service? You drive a service economy by doing so, and you will also reduce the cost. And I think the most important point on this slide is really assessing the value for money across the life cycle. So that means not just taking into account the purchasing price, but really looking at the usage of the product and the disposal of a product. And based on a life cycle approach, we will very often see in most cases that a sustainable product or service is really not the one at the higher cost. So I'll stop here, but I would be very happy to explaining all the other points made after the presentation. Thank you.